Hello, everyone. It's a huge pleasure to welcome you for our panel. My name is Inga. I'm the founder and CEO of ShapesXR, which is design and prototyping platform to build immersive apps, experiences, and it's an enterprise product. And design and collaboration in 3D is a passion of mine. I'm doing that for the last 10 years, and that's why it's incredible to have this panel in place, and I can guarantee that you're going to learn a lot today. As I learned a lot when I was meeting my panelists and speakers, and they represent some real businesses and some real projects, and then they're going to share their lessons and insights. So let's start from the introduction. So from that side, Framarz, why don't you introduce yourself, the company, and then afterwards we jump to questions.
Sure. Thank you, Inga. My name's Framarz Mistry. I'm with Mohawk Industries. We are the world's largest flooring manufacturer. So we do everything from carpet, hard surface, anything but concrete that you stand on. My journey's been to this stage has been quite a journey. I started off with a bachelor's in architecture and very quickly realized that it's not as creative as I wanted to be. And then I did a master's in game design and I've worked with architecture firms throughout the globe, setting up their visualization studios. And I did that until about 2016 when I joined Mohawk Group, which is the commercial division of Mohawk Industries, and I am the Senior Director of Design Technology there, heading up visualization studios and doing a lot of software development for visualization. Yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
How's it going? My name's Brennan. I work for Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. So I manage a team called Virtual Prototyping. We do advanced visualization, modeling, and simulation. I've been doing this for about 40 years. We've been heavily into AR the last probably 10 years. I believe we've used every commercial tool in hardware and software out there at one point or another. We do have custom software. We've dabbled in custom hardware. But our business case is how do we improve the way that we design and build the fixed-wing vehicles that we sell to the government customer? How do we become more efficient? How do we improve our training process? Particularly in the Skunk Works, there may be cases where we build only one vehicle. So it's not a mass production thing. It's not something people can learn over time. And so how do we get them trained up as quickly as possible on the task at hand? So I do AI and XR both in industry and academia with a strong interest in sparse data. How do we train these models and visualize things when there's not a lot of data available?
Hi, I'm Daniel Nahara. I'm with a company called HNTB. It's a civil engineering firm, basically doing all types of transportation projects, aviation, transit, tunneling. Basically, if you need to get across the city or the urban landscape, we're probably involved. We do lots of engineering behind the scenes and design work. And I'm personally from the National Sales Office, inside the creative media studio there, where we specialize in 3D architecture, urban design planning, graphic design, motion design, and what I'm personally fond of is the immersive design aspects, where me and my team, we basically work in different real-time engines, bringing interactivity to engineering projects, mostly on the pursuit side. So we're using things way early in the design. We're usually using design files that are probably 10 years old, and we're getting them ready for the interview. And we're working with the marketing teams and the engineering teams basically to focus what the message is going to be at the day of sale, at the proposal dates, and at the interview dates. And then later for thinking, what is the public going to think about this, and what aspects of the public needs to know about this, and what can we make accessible today for them. And then we work with other teams in our firm to give them the data that we start setting up at these stages that will be useful later on down the longevity of the project, because most of our projects last anywhere from 2 to 10 years. So we have to be forward thinking about the innovation that we start proposing early on.
All right, my name's Andy. I'm from Bridgestone Americas, and we make the black donuts that many of you drive here on, right? But my group, Engineering Services Support, we're there to support engineering teams that are building the machines that make those black donuts. So a lot of robotics, a lot of automation, lots of conveyors, things like that. I have CAD teams, I have data management teams, and I have an innovation team. We got into XR about 10 years ago as kind of a skunkworks project. It was just a fun thing we were going to do, and then we screwed up, and somehow the CEO seen it, and it became a major part of what we were trying to do as far as next generation of engineering at Bridgestone. And so we do everything from design review to remote assistance to now training with XR across everything from Argentina to Canada, our manufacturing plants, and then now in Europe as well. And so been around this group for a long time, this AWS. I love this conference, and hopefully we can share some good stuff with you guys today.
Hello, my name is Juan. I work for Bell Flight, also known as Bell Helicopter. I've been leading the virtual prototyping team for the last 6 years. We're part of the digital integration team. Basically, my job is to help the engineers make a better product. Very fortunate that our company is small enough in a way that we get to see the whole design and oversee the whole design of the aircraft. Different aircrafts, projects, commercial, military, and just leveraging virtual prototyping to influence design. And the more we get that influence and find out issues early in the design, that's going to help us later on to make a more sustainable product, something that's going to be easy to manufacture, and the operators, the pilots, at the end of the day, are going to be happy flying, and yeah.
Happy flying sounds incredible. Okay, thank you so much.
Hi, Farbod Mehr. I work with Arup, a global design and consulting firm with some iconic projects around the world, including Sydney Opera House, Centre Pompidou in Paris, multiple Olympic venues, including the Water Cube in China. So I work in LA office as part of the technology team. Our team's job is to bring technology into the built environment. But I also do have a passion for cutting edge technology and the digital tools that I believe give us superpowers in the design process. Some things that we couldn't do before, now we can. I'm lucky to have a team around me that supports me in that vision and in that passion, and happy to be here to share some of the examples of the projects with you today.
Thanks a lot, speakers, for introduction. So you see, we have very different industries, very different, roles and type of companies today. So I hope we cover, design and prototyping, visualization, and how unlock actually XR superpowers and share some lessons with you. But we know, one unbeatable superpower of XR is that you can actually experience design in 3D. You can interact with that in 3D, and definitely it's much easier to communicate some very complicated ideas, some complex design and large-scale projects. So the first thing that I want to talk about is about communicating and how XR helps you to speak to stakeholders, to different team members from different teams and different groups. So Daniel, you mentioned, and I mean, you are dealing with a really large scale engineering projects, right? It's so how are you applying extended reality technologies to turn just technical specs into more like experience so that people can probably better understand the whole idea and see the big picture? Could you share some concrete examples so that the audience can understand the super value of, utilizing XR?
Yeah, so I'm really glad to answer this because since we work on such massive scale projects, a lot of my files are about 10 miles long. A lot of teams, they may only work on a quarter of a mile at a time. They're only concerned what's happening outside the corridor by 5 or 10 feet. But when you're in XR, when you're in these real-time environments, you want to see everything as a stakeholder. You want to see how the roads are being impacting, like a Costco across the street, or how the kids are going to school, how the school buses are going to line up during 8 o'clock morning traffic. So we do a lot of traffic simulations and our things. But we take in all this context from disparate different data files that maybe a lot of times when we're working on it, it's the first time anyone's seen all this data layered on top of each other. And it's one of my first jobs is basically go into all our recovery data files, ask all our engineers for every single file that they have, start bringing that into our real-time environment so we can just learn what the story is there. And then that leads us to conversations with our engineers and our marketing teams to really dive into what are we trying to talk about, what is the emphasis of our interview going to be on the day. But having access to all this in real time really allows for some great explorations. Sometimes we're doing the XR on the early stage. We're just putting, hey, this is what it's going to look like, this is what it's going to feel like in the headset, this is all the stuff you told us that you guys want to see. And maybe we find out, oh, that's too much, it's too cluttered. You see too much of the data. We've done many city examples, like turntable type of work, but then you can't actually see the, one little piece of line work that they're actually trying to talk about. So, it's finding that fine-tuned line with them and going through all these data sets. And it's kind of being like a data archaeologist in real time, though, in a real-time environment, and it's a lot of fun. These when the teams are open to this exploration, we find some really cool ideas, and I'm really lucky to have a great development team behind me that if I want to be artistic and make everything like a Monet painting, we can flip some switches and make that happen, or we can make it really realistic. But we do that all from listening to our engineers, listening to our marketing teams, and really defining that message. And it's a lot of fun.
No, that makes total sense. And actually, Farbod is doing also large-scale projects, also for very big cities, but a little bit earlier stage designing and envisioning. And when we talked with him, he mentioned, one of big urbanization projects. So could you please share, because I think that you can even involve some very different subject domain experts and probably even city authorities, and how XR helps you to communicate those design concepts instead of just showing them 2D renders, beautiful renders that we can see in some marketing booklets, but instead actually envision that in XR.
Sure, yes. I usually refer to those types of XR tools as teleporting people to the future, because we are literally putting them in a future building that is not even built. That gives the stakeholders the opportunity to really experience the space and feel the space and see if there is any changes needed, if they're happy with their decisions, are they willing to spend that extra money for that feature or not? Because other than that, if you talk to them about these features of sound isolations or transportation issues that may happen or wayfinding issues, it is hard to digest some of those and justify the extra cost. I can give you a quick example of a hospital that we were designing a few years back, and this hospital happened to be near an Air Force base. Obviously, fighter jets flying over, and the hospital is there. The question was how much of sound isolation we need for these patient rooms to isolate the sound, and you cannot experience it unless you're inside the room and hearing the noise, right? So we created this virtual patient room with the exact same environment. And the interesting part of it is that when we talk about XR, we usually focus on the visual side of it. But the true immersive experience engages more than your visual senses. It engages your hearing, sound, scent, touch, and all that stuff. So we brought in our acousticians for creating the real sounds that can happen by the jets flying over, but at the same time, the real ambient noise of the hospital, nurses chatting behind the door, machines beeping and all that stuff. So they could be in that room hearing all the real ambient noises from a hospital and a jet flying. And then when we talked about, okay, do we need 2 panes of glass or 3 panes of glass? Do we need these isolation materials or that isolation materials. They said, we are willing to spend that extra money because we really need to take care of this noise issue. So that helped the stakeholders make a confident decision which was better for them and for their patients. So yeah, that was an example.
That's a very, very vivid and clear example. And to wrap up on like communication perspective of the superpowers of XR, I had a chat with Juan, and then it was so incredible to hear. He was saying like, no one was asking pilots for feedback to design we do for years, right? So, but actually pilots are the people who should have the happy flight, as you mentioned. So could you please share like how extended reality and the prototypes you do, and you do a lot, help you to get the feedback from people who are actually going to utilize what you build, and how you iterate on the design, how you can hear like more stakeholders and quickly, change and make better design decisions?
Yeah, so actually that was kind of like one of the first projects that I started working on, because, well, when we discovered that we had this software that had VR capabilities, we're like, well, how are we actually getting feedback from the pilots to get us to tell us like, okay, do they like this? Do they don't like this? Do they want more visibility in this certain area? And no one was asking them, or if it was very rudimentary, also like having like physical prototypes built, which are expensive and take a long time, and you don't have a lot of options. So my boss actually was telling me that a long time ago they had this aircraft built, and well, the pilots, when they sat on it for the first time to fly it, and then when they looked to the side, there was this beam right across where they needed to see sideways, and like, okay, when they tried to lean forward, that beam just followed their like line of vision. So it was really like, that was something that could have been easily prevented if they just sat 2 minutes in VR and saw a model prototype and saw that, and like how they were going to use it, how they were going to see around, have an environment. So yeah, just so having that from the beginning, showing the pilots even before we have anything built. We have requirements that we have to follow. We have other things that we know, like, okay, the pilots need, say, protection and just a minimal like field of vision. But just having them there and like hearing their feedback, like, okay, I don't like this beam right here. Can we move it over here? Or this is going to be a problem for this type of operation. Can we minimize this or move it a little bit more forward? So just getting that feedback, and like not only, I mean, you can have that from physical prototypes, but the ability to have, say, 20 models, or like being able to move the models on the fly, and like, hey, how does that look? Like we had an issue that, like, say, actually an upper beam was like obstructing the field of vision. So we're like, oh, we just need to move a couple inches up, and we just convey that to the engineers, and it was like, oh, really easy. And now we end up with a product that the pilots are going to be a lot happier with. And yeah, it's going to be, so that's how this got this ball rolling, and like we got the human factors team on board, and then my supervisors, they were like on board, and like they saw the value of just having this initial design validation, where at the beginning would just save us headaches later on so much easier.
100%, and human factors make so much sense. And I mean, yeah, so I think no one has any doubt that XR has a really immediate impact on involving different stakeholders, designers, engineers, actual people who are going to use the product, and communicating these very complex design ideas and iterate super fast. But there is another superpower of XR. So sometimes extended reality and the fact that you can visualize something that just does not exist in physical world yet, and it requires millions of dollars to build that, XR become the pre-sales tool. It actually has the business impact. It helps you to win budgets. It helps you to win decisions. And we have some examples here as well. So Mohawk Group, for example, what they're doing from a commercial perspective, they can, they are changing the flooring in big hotels like this one. So Framarz, are there any examples that, having that VR in showrooms or bringing headsets to, I don't know, like big hotels network helped you to win big deals and better communicate than just, again, bringing 2D renders instead?
Yeah, absolutely. For this, if you don't mind, can I have a raise of hands? How many people have painted a room or a house, painted the interiors of your house, right? A lot of you. When you made that selection for the colors, how did you do it? You probably went to Home Depot, you got a little swatch, so you got a swatch which was about that big, and then you had to imagine what your entire room was going to look like with that little swatch. When we're dealing with commercial projects for flooring, we're talking about convention centers, ballrooms, which are about this size. And we're creating these bespoke experiences. No hotel wants to look like the next hotel, or a ballroom wants to look like the next ballroom in the hotel next door. So when you're creating these experiences, it's so difficult to visualize what a tiny swatch of this product would look like spread over thousands of square feet. And that's where we brought in virtual reality experiences, and we actually did a project in 2018 where we installed VR systems throughout all our showrooms in the United States. And any user could walk into any of the showrooms, put on a headset, and start visualizing products in a larger space, and with a swipe of their finger, be able to change out the products. So it was so easy to visualize something in a much larger scale instead of looking at a tiny swatch or a sample of a carpet or a little, swatch of flooring, or even just a rendering. This was a more immersive experience. And that worked really successful. We won Neocon Gold. If anyone's familiar with Neocon, it's a big trade show in Chicago, and we won Neocon Gold that year for that technology.
That's immediate and so easy to understand the value with this example. So, and again, XR helps you to win deals, to win your clients, and you absolutely can explore that for external wins. But also sometimes, we have champions for XR within the company, and then you have to kind of win green lights from your team members, from your managers, evangelize the technology. So, Andy, you are like globally distributed teams. You have globally distributed design reviews. So how are you doing that, and how having those XR experiences help you to kind of better get the decision to be made?
Yeah, so using XR, we have headsets at every plant, North and South America. Okay. So we're able to get that out there. And then one of the things I noticed, a lot of these guys up here, you're talking about engineers, you're talking about pilots, sometimes you hear about doctors. We're dealing with guys that are handling bales of rubber. This is not highly skilled labor. They don't know how to use CAD. Most of them don't have email addresses. So how do you get that guy in there and look at that stuff? And so we'll put an operator in there and go, hey, what is this going to do for you? What does this look like? And they're able to walk through the machine. Our machines are huge, 5 stories, about 300 feet long, 100 feet wide, mixer. So lots of stairs, lots of ladders. You got to go up and down. So these guys are able to get in there. I remember one guy in Mexico was telling us, he didn't speak any English, so it was through a translator. My Spanish is very pico, very pico. But he's going, I'm like, was he saluting? And it's like, no, this beam is going to hit him in the head.
Oh my God.
And the guy that was translating actually was the plant manager. He had been the plant manager in another plant. He goes, those guys have been complaining about hitting their head at that other plant for 8 years. Nobody ever thought to tell us. This is like the 6th or 7th one of these we're designing. Put an operator in there and go, hey, if we move this thing over 12 inches, they're not going to hit their head on it. He didn't have to speak the language. He didn't have to understand how to use CAD. He just did his job. He walked around in the headset and said, okay, what am I going to do? Hey, I'm hitting my head right here. We need to move this thing over. CAD, it's almost free to move that over versus, these giant machines that are several stories tall. You can't do it. So having that guy at that plant in Mexico put that on and do it, he was able to be part of that design team without even knowing, how to use the software.
Exactly. So basically, it's making it so much more accessible, and then democratizing. Like reading CAD, you have to have the spatial 3D mindset to actually understand that. How many people in the audience did any trainings in VR? Could you raise your hand? Okay. How many of you deployed trainings, VR trainings in your organization or AR trainings? Okay, then the next perspective that we are going to touch base will be very relevant. So definitely, training in XR is the most successful use case, and this is how many companies started, and it's proven. There's so many research data, so much research data on like how people learn better, especially repeatable skills, and then how much money it saves. And today we have also in our panel Brennan from Lockheed Martin, and I think they have a ton of experience introducing XR and also marrying that with AI, most recently probably. Could you share more examples like how you started, how these progressed up to date, what are the most successful projects in training, and also, merging XR and AI for that?
So in our applications, Lockheed Martin's a very big company, and we have some vehicles where we make over 1,000 a year, and we have some that will only ever make one. And so there's a big spectrum in how we deploy training. Someone may have a task that they will do every day for a full year, and it doesn't change. And so those are really easy to deploy consistent content for, to build the experience, and then it's just out, it's deployed. So complex things like wire routing, wire harness routing. So when you're building a vehicle, you may be in a less than optimal position, and you've got to remember where this particular system runs. When you're building something like an F-35, there's a bunch of systems that run through the same panels and the same conduits, and knowing which wire goes where and what's coming next, what else are you going to have to put through that panel, can be very helpful for them to understand the task and conceptualize it. And that's really low-hanging fruit. We're seeing 50 to 80% reduction in install times on some of our vehicles. But on the flip side of that is if we're only building
80%, you said?
Yeah, if you're not doing it in AR, you're doing it either on a screen or you've got a piece of paper. And so you go out to the vehicle, you run a section that you remember where it goes, and then you either look at your paper, go back to a desk and look at the paper, find it on a screen, try to remember where you are. Whereas if you have it on a headset, it's right there in front of you. You just follow the instructions and it goes through. But that's in the case where we're doing like mass production scale type things. In my world, where I spend most of my time, we may only build one, or we may build a dozen. And so spending much of time building an experience for that doesn't make a lot of sense. And so that's where we bring in AI. I won't get into too much detail about exactly what we're doing, but conceptually, if I have a user with a headset, I already have a camera in the space. I have a scan of the space. I've got a CAD model of the vehicle. I have access to foundation models that can do a lot of amazing things. And so just by connecting the pieces that I have, I'm now able to give that operator feedback on what they're seeing, how that compares to what I know it should look like, and give them a natural language response to get them through whatever challenge they have. And I never had to build anything or update it for some change that happened. It can be real time. They're in this place, we recognize the CAD, we know the vehicle-ish, right? We kind of have an idea of what they want to do, and we can help guide them from there to remedy their problem without having a deterministic set of, if this happens, then do this type of situation.
Yeah, that's very impressive, first of all, and has immediate impacts. And when we had a chat, just before this panel, Brennan and Eddie were discussing, deploying VR, XR, AR, actually, for training purposes. And Andy, you mentioned that there is lots of safety concerns as well. So how are you progressing with, training, deployment at Bridgestone?
Yeah, so, our machinery, people don't realize a lot of tire machinery is very large, it's very dangerous. We do have accidents, unfortunately, that people can get hurt really badly if they're not careful. So safety first, right? So you bring a brand new person in, last week they were working at McDonald's, today they're gonna be working in this tire plant, and we scare them to death about safety, right? And so we've had multiple times where they go out to these big machines, it's loud, it's noisy, and they'll walk out the door. They're like, no, I'm too scared. So by putting them into a VR environment ahead of time, we teach them some of the steps. There's a lot of steps they have to memorize. We give them some of the noise and the kind of the the scariness of the machine. So then when they go out to the floor, they're not as scared. They understand what's going on. They do that. So not a huge sample size we've done with this, but we've seen a drastic reduction in those walkouts where people are just walk in and just scared to death and turn around and leave. Because once again, they're not engineers, they're not pilots. These guys are making, McDonald's to Bridgestone shifts, and now they understand when they come in there, okay, how do I be safe? How do I do this? And we're also using it to train safety to existing employees, try to make it a little bit more fun. So we'll have a training class with 20 people, maybe 1 or 2 people put the headsets on and, okay, what did he miss? Kind of make a game out of it. And so it becomes more interactive, and we get people to engage and think about safety, where they're not just, oh, another boring PowerPoint on safety I got to go through. They're actually getting to engage with the stuff and see a little bit of humor in there and be a part of it. And so using that for safety has been huge for us.
Yeah, it seems like you're quite advanced, compared to many other companies. And when I speak to Fortune 500 companies, a lot of times, it's still like a champion obsessed with the technology. And then whenever it's coming to scale that to entire organization, or at least, to go from R&D and innovation to a business unit, there is still a lot of friction to scale XR. So how many of you actually failed to introduce XR to your company at scale? Okay, you failed. That's super brave to raise your hand. Wonderful. But you tried. Did you give up, or you're still trying? No. Okay. How many of you successfully actually deployed XR and still trying that? Okay, wonderful. So when we were talking, with our panelists, they have all different, experience. Some companies again are very supportive, but some still very resistant to that. So I would like to ask each of you about, the advice you can give to introduce XR, sometimes XR and AI, like this new tag for purpose, for the good, for to achieve some real business goals. Just your personal experience, how to start and how to make sure that it's not get buried and the first budget to be cut is XR. So, Farbod, if you start, sure. And then Juan, we can go that way, or if you want, just start.
Well, I just wanted to, once you see it, seeing is believing, right? I might be cliche, but just being able to realize, okay, we found this issue early, so we don't have to correct it in the future when we actually find it and it's really expensive. That's something that's already built, already has tooling, that has been gone through many hours of design work and analysis, and just scrap that and having to start over because we didn't find we had a major issue. That's very impactful. That just it's exponential. If you find it here, it's a little bit cost to change. If you find it later, it's a little bit more cost. If you find it when you're actually ready to go, and that issue is just major costs, major delays, not only time but money. So once the management or the people in charge sees that and realizes, okay, this is going to save us so much money, that's a little difficult to quantify, but just doing all those things at the beginning, finding out those issues at the beginning are going to be so much impact.
It started from you being curious how to solve the problem, right?
Yes.
So it was not top down. It was you who identified the problem, find the tag that can fix it.
Yeah, no, and also spread out the word to everyone. Hey, if you have an issue, if you think you have an issue, come to me or come to talk to someone and let's collaborate. Let's try to figure out a solution, and we'll have working groups that will have iterative design solutions, or trying to find out a solution okay, this doesn't work, how do we do this, change it a little bit, how about you trim it here, how about you do it differently, and just trying to break out the silos from the design teams. Different design teams are maybe a little isolated from each other, and trying to get them to talk to each other. If you get 2 teams that are fighting because the requirements are this, or I don't want to move this component because I don't want to make it heavier, which for aircraft is a very big deal. But when you say a maintainer tells them, look, go try it in VR, tell me how it should be done. And like when they actually see, like, oh, wow, yeah, I need to make a change. So just allowing you to make that decision faster, getting all the people in the room, communicate, show what the problem is, everyone understands, is very impactful to like, okay, come out, not only everyone sees what the problem is, but also make those decisions easier and faster. Also saves time,
100%.
saves
and
money.
then, yeah, so it's just like they can't resist. I mean, that's immediate value. So for the sake of time, 1 minute for each speaker, we just go, and then Farbod, like, how do you recommend people to introduce XR and then, scale it? Not too early, not too late.
Sure, Ani, we were talking, I think Brennan mentioned before this panel that, and I believe truly in that too, we really need to show people and decision makers, again, as an example in our firm could be our engineers doing their own way of things for many, many years, or the clients doing their design and construction process in a certain way for many years. We really need to show people how these tools can make their life easier, right? We can talk about all the coolness of these features and the cost reduction and the hours reductions, but how it's going to make your life easier, I think is going to have an impact. And then number two, real quick, is that we as a group have a responsibility to keep advocating for these technologies and these digital tools to make sure that we create awareness. The more informed people are, the easier the transition.
The better decisions. Andy.
Yeah, I think one thing is celebrate your failures. We got a couple guys that said, hey, they tried this and it failed, but why did it fall? What is the root cause? A lot of times it has nothing to do with XR. I'm doing a class later this afternoon. It's about, hey, there's this problem. We don't have good data. We don't have 3D data. We don't have this. We don't have that content maybe. And so celebrate that as, okay, our goal is to get the content better. XR is not a magic bullet that's going to give you content in your databases. It's just a tool that's going to help you get better data down the road. So celebrate those failures and learn from them, and use those lessons to try again. Don't stop. Keep trying. Try again, and learn from what didn't work as much as you learn from what did work.
Thank you, Daniel.
One thing I really like about the whole term XR, it kind of means everything. It's VR, AR, tablet, interactive PC experiences, pixel streaming experiences. And what's kind of great about that, it sounds really daunting, but it lets you cater to what your person actually needs, or your people, your audience going to need. So you don't have to put VR in every little thing, but if you know that they're going to be really receptive to VR, or they're going to be really receptive to MR or AR, you can cater that specific thing. Now we're a decade into the whole XR experiment, whatever you want to call this, that we're here. But you can go down to the vendors, you can tell them your different use cases, and really work with your vendors. That's what's been helpful for us, is just coming to these conferences, really being on the edge of innovation, and just saying, well, I don't need it today, but tomorrow somebody's going to come in and ask for that device, or ask for, do we have a solution for this? Right now we're talking about one thing that changed us was 5G hotspotting. We could carry a 5G hotspot, and all of a sudden our packet size has got so much larger that now it's not really daunting if I have to go to Arkansas and show a VR experience to 100 people that have never put on a headset. We can, we're just like, okay, we've done that. Now what's the next challenge? So it's really fun to just cater these experiences for everyone.
So I'm a big fan of it doesn't matter how much money you save. Particularly even in large-scale industrial things, it's very easy to go, well, this project's going to save $100 million a year, but that only works if they use the experience. And the end user won't implement that experience, they won't use it if it doesn't solve a pain point. If it's more friction, especially in a manufacturing environment, if it's more friction to implement it, the person at the point of use will not use it, regardless of how happy it made your vice president that you were going to save a ton of money. And so you have to solve pain points, solve friction points, and reduce the friction to implementing the technology.
I think the biggest challenge that we faced with the VR deployment that we did and everything, we actually had to shut down all the VR systems after COVID because nobody wants to share a headset, right? So we did go through failures, even though it was successful initially, but it did fail eventually. The idea, I mean, again, I echo everything that everyone said over here, but for me, the biggest thing is be nimble on your feet, be ready to pivot at any point. Like I knew that VR is successful. The way we deployed it may not be, and we quickly pivoted to a mobile VR solution where we just started doing 360 experiences that we just share via a web link, and with a Google Cardboard device, you still get that same experience and nobody's hesitant to try that out. So I think the idea is just constantly be ready to pivot. Technology is changing so fast. All the tools that we are used to today or hear about today, a decade from now, there's going to be a whole bunch of new tools out there. So I think the thing is just be ready to pivot as quick as possible, right?
Thank you, everyone. So we might have just a minute for one question, but our speakers are very open to meet you, afterwards, during the lunch. You see, we are all very optimistic about XR impact on design and engineering. So, questions? You can take one, given the time, but there is no microphone around. So, and we even managed actually to say entire panel almost not mentioning AI. Like, even though that makes probably total sense that this technology makes so much value, by combining these two, right? Okay, thank you everyone for coming to our panel. And if you have any questions one-to-one to our speakers, feel free to stop them. Thank you.